Okay, welcome everybody back to the Life Less Perfect podcast. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. Happy Year of the Snake. Woo! Personally, an awesome year for me as I was born in the year of the snake. Also, it's a number 9 year, which I know that my guest, Leslie Grover, say hi, Leslie,
Hello, everyone.
is also a number 9. So we're going to rock it this year. Am I right, my friend?
We are. It's going to be amazing.
Yes. So I just want to take a moment to introduce my dear, dear friend, Leslie Grover. So Leslie has always been called into the psychospiritual world, which led her to obtaining a psych degree and then transpersonal counseling, which for those who don't know what that is, it's kind of more of a spiritual approach to psychotherapy. Would that be correct, Leslie?
That's correct. Yes.
From there, Leslie has recently completed her master's in therapeutic arts, where she uses art and other modalities to assist her clients in individual and group settings. Leslie's approach is inquiry based, and she works as your companion together with you in a relational space that allows for a rich co creation to emerge. And having worked personally with Leslie, I can speak to those skills, but I also want to mention that Leslie also completed her psychedelic assisted therapy certification. And that's actually where this lovely lady and I met, and we've become fast friends ever since. So, welcome, Leslie, to the Life Less Perfect podcast. Say hi again.
Hello. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here, Shauna. Great to actually do something a little different than how we normally get to connect. Do something a little bit more like this, which is great.
Totally. I love it. And so, let's go back a ways, Leslie, because this is the Life Less Perfect podcast. And so we want to kind of help our audience understand that when we get handed lemons sometimes in life, they can lead us to a more fulfilling life led with purpose and some lemonade, maybe. So let's talk about what led you down this path. Because I know that when we met too, and we can talk about this a little bit later too, let's earmark it for down the road, that you also came to me as a client for a time because you were in a period of what we could maybe call burnout, which is very common for many women in business. So let's dial it back a little bit and talk about what was happening for you when maybe life was a little less perfect.
Yeah. Well, it's a good place to start. I mean, I remember growing up as a child and having a pretty happy child life. So I thought I ended up at university, did a Bachelor of Arts degree in anthropology, sociology. I kind of fumbled my way into that and realized that I was really interested in like humans, human development, cultures, that sort of thing. And then from there, I went on a wild adventure, went to Europe, did the whole Europe backpacking trip back in 97, 98, and then ended up in Australia for 20 years. So kind of took it from northwestern Canada all the way down to southern Australia, which is really fantastic. And I think that's where I did most of my healing, my personal journey really helped a lot there. And I was always searching for something that I could do, whether it was either here or in Australia. How can I be in service, to other people? So it's there that I got fascinated by psychology, sort of stayed in the humanities. And psychology was great. I did that back in the early 2000s, but for me, it was very dogmatic. It was very structured in the university sense. So I felt more called to wait. And then I jumped into more experiential learning, which is where I ended up in the transpersonal counseling world and then into the art therapy. And that also helped me to be a mother to my children over the years. So I might be starting a little bit later, but yeah, just gave me the opportunity to sort of to ease into it and have a bit of life experience in the meantime.
Now, I know also in Australia, that's where you were married, and ultimately that marriage broke down, which happens for many of us. Um,
Yeah.
that is a huge transition in life for many women, right? Which can either sort of push us down a spiral of, becoming into victim consciousness, shall we say, or it move us further towards a goal. So do you want to talk about
Mm.
that? Because I know we connected a little
Yeah.
bit. And it's not to disparage any people in our lives because you and I both know that we meet people for a reason. And
Yeah.
They are there to help us grow and evolve. But I know we share a little bit of sort of similar experiences in terms of those failed marriages and certain personality types. But maybe you could talk a little bit about that and then where you sort of how you ended up back in Canada.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it was a bit of a challenging divorce. Unfortunately, I realized that, it wasn't going to be what I want in the long term. So I made the decision to leave, which probably didn't land very well with my ex-husband. We were in the middle of working franchises. I was finishing up my psychology degree, had a young daughter and a young son. And I don't know, I call it divine intervention, I suppose, and had this epiphany that this isn't what I need. It became very toxic. And once I sort of realized that I was in this gaslighting, and, it really started to take an effect on my health, even my mental health. I was just, looking for other ways out. And so I realized this is probably not going to be sustainable for the rest of my life. So I made the decision to leave. I walked away and pretty much left everything, which was unfortunate. But at the same time, I always said you can't put a price on happiness. And that's what I was ultimately seeking for myself and for my children. So we left. I left, and I was there 10 years. I was with the kids' dad, and then 10 years I was on my own in Australia. So, through that, I feel I built a lot of resilience, because at the end of the day, when you're on your own and you have only your social network, yeah, that's what I ended up having to do, is just rely on my community to help me through the parenting of my children. Kids were in sports, so it was hard, right? I would get up in the morning and have to take one kid to one place and then take another kid to the other. And, Melbourne is where I lived, and it's not a small city. There's 3 million people there. So you're driving from one end of town to the other, and that could take you an hour. So it was very challenging. But again, it built me that resilience that I needed to get me to where I am today. And that's something I like to instill in my children as well, and my clients, to let them know that these adversities that we walk into don't have bad outcomes. They can really help us in the end. Yeah.
They don't have to have bad outcomes, that's for
They
sure.
don't have to have bad outcomes. Yeah. Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about gene keys in this podcast, and I know that you have 55 is prominent in your gene keys. I should mention that Leslie is also a talented gene keys facilitator. And so, that ultimately it can, I think the gift in that is freedom, right? And the shadow aspect of that, I believe, is victim consciousness. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And the city, the overlying energy is freedom as well. So it was really hard being in Australia and having the 50-50 key, and realizing I felt very trapped, actually. A beautiful country. I would say
Yeah,
it wasn't a bad place to end up, but at the same time, I felt very trapped there because I wasn't able to be fully in my expression of who I am.
yeah. So fast forward a little bit, then I know you ultimately ended up back in Canada and you were working a corporate job that, as I understand it, became less and less fulfilling over time. And you were just, spirit was giving you nudges that it was time to leave this work. And so, this often requires such a leap of faith, right? We don't have ground beneath our feet. We don't know what the next step always is. But I was certainly very proud of you when you took that great leap of faith and you decided to then finally put yourself first and do some very needed self-care. And that's sort of what further, I guess, connected us. Yeah, Leslie became a client of mine in my functional medicine practice. And Leslie, if you are you open to speaking into that a little bit and what that experience was like?
Yeah. Yeah, so I left my marriage and then ended up with an underactive thyroid. So I have hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's is what they call it, after what I believed of living a really healthy life. So that was something that really struck me, for the last 10 years or so, until I moved back to Canada. And then I ended up in this corporate job, which was really great. It, gave me some great skills. But towards the end, I was like, this isn't where I want to go career wise, knowing that I wanted to really follow this path of, being in a therapeutic realm. So I ended up leaving. I also cleaned up my diet. I cleaned up my health. I quit drinking alcohol, did a whole bunch of different things that I thought were going to help me become the healthier person that I am, because I could see my health deteriorating. And I thought, well, if I leave my job, that's going to change everything. And it didn't. And that kind of was a big shock for me in the end. And that's when you and I met. I did go off my thyroid medication, which I highly recommend not doing ever. And in one of the calls that I had with Shauna, when I was sort of joking about, the 189 on my test result, when it should be between 1 and 4, Shauna's like, I could see her face drop. And I was like, well, I'm trying to do it the healthy way and my way. And said, well, maybe we should have a chat. And from there, it actually opened up a whole bunch of other health issues that I didn't, realize I was actually struggling with. And so, I think part of it was the work, life balance, which wasn't there. But the big eye opener was leaving my job and realizing that it wasn't actually just my job. It was a lot more that was happening. So I got the privilege to work with you, which is great. And still rave about it years later. It's been a couple of years now since this health journey started. And, I look back at the pictures I was showing somebody the other day, one of my friends, and I said, can you believe this? This is who I was and this is who I am today. And it's really, I look back and think, you try and get through life every day, on a scale of 1 to 10, feeling like a 1 all the time, which is your normal. And so anything more than that feels like a miracle. And working with you gave me that opportunity. So now I can say I'm thriving on like a 9, maybe some days on an 8, but I ain't going back to a 1. That's for sure.
No. And I just want to say too, when I first met Leslie, I mean, the change in her, as soon as she got on the plan and we got her, Hashimoto's figured out and her thyroid and some hormone balancing in there and other nasty H. pylori infection. So, and those are all things that we work on, but, remarkably, like how much later was it? 4 months later,
Yeah.
she's hiking the Camino. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the coolest story ever, and
Yeah.
that was real amazing spiritual experience for you as well. So there again, and I just want to reiterate this, when we surrender to where spirit or life wants to take us, the universe wants to take us, it's amazing, then where we can end up after that, right? So maybe talk a little
Yeah.
bit your Camino Trail experiences, Leslie, because I think it was
Yeah.
amazing.
So back in Australia, oh gosh, I want to say it's probably 20 years now. I did one of those 100 bucket list items, and the Camino hit. I can't remember which number it was on there, but it was definitely on one of the top priorities for me to go and experience. So I woke up. I remember when I was sort of ending my corporate job, I sort of promised to stay for a couple of months just to ease out of it because I was in a leadership role. And I remember waking up one day thinking I want to go back and finish my master's, which I'd started in Australia before I moved back, and complete that. And I thought, it'd be great just to get into some exercise, but I just wake up every day feeling drained. I just had zero energy. And even the thought of studying again, it just made me feel so tired. So I said, no, it's not going to happen. Anyways, long story short, I started working with you in May. I remember we did the whole program and everything like that. And it was the 9th of July. I jumped on the computer and I actually booked my flight to go to the Camino. And I started walking on, oh, I'm getting emotional talking about it. Wow. Yeah. On the 28th of August is when I started walking. And it was a 34-day journey, which I never ever expected to be a spiritual. I know the Camino is all about, a pilgrimage to, St. James, Santiago de Compostela. And I started in the Pyrenees in the French side of French. But I never expected ever in my whole entire life that I would, be walking, 800 kilometers and also have such a profound spiritual experience with the people I met. I met some beautiful American people. I still talk to them in my Camino family. I met a gentleman who was just got on his bike and started riding from Belgium, and we had a profound moment with him. I had another experience with a woman who was like 76 in Pontpellier. And yeah, just meeting people who have this Camino spirit within them and just really connecting with myself, really, which was important. Connecting with God really brought me back into like my spiritual relationship with myself and my communion with, the universe and God or spirit, however we call it. So yeah, it was very profound, and it was one of the best things I could do because it got my metabolism back into shape as well. So if you're gonna go walk 800 kilometers, 30 kilometers a day, it's great. It's fantastic. So yeah.
Remarkable. And I mean, it's such a testimony to, not only the work that I love to do in functional medicine, but also just following your dreams and following, where spirit is leading you and the remarkable things that can happen along the way.
Yeah.
So that is
Yeah.
beautiful. So fast forward, Leslie came home from her amazing trip. And Leslie, are you're open to talking a little bit about some of the work we do with psychedelics with
Yeah,
our
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Very interesting
Leslie
journey
and
with that.
Leslie and I formed a partnership and we work with clients. Now, just a caveat here, of course, psychedelic medicines aren't necessarily legal here in Canada. I mean, I think they're very close, but of course, people can find these medicines. And Leslie and I are very passionate about making sure that people are A, prepared well for sitting with these medicines, B, that they're kept safe while sitting with these medicines, and C, that they are integrating their experiences after their medicine journey. So that's how we work with clients. We are not condoning the use of any sort of illegal medicine, but we certainly are here to facilitate preparation and safety and integration. So we've had the distinct pleasure of working with a number of clients together over the last couple of years. And I have to say that, Leslie and I both really discovered the magic of the number three. And so having two qualified guides and experienced psychonauts sitting alongside you, holding that space and also sort of not in a super clinical fashion either. I would say Leslie and I both have different gifts and abilities and skills that we bring into the medicine space. Like there was no talking about what we were going to do. It just happened magically. And I really saw Leslie's skills come forward in sitting with clients and in our own journey together. We've journeyed together a few times. We facilitate each other in our spiritual and consciousness growth, I should say. And
Mhm.
just comes to us in these beautiful ways of what we both have to offer in those spaces. And so I can say that Leslie's art therapy comes through even during the journey. And so for our clients that we sit with, Leslie is very much, I would say, if I could say, be so bold as to say, is channeling spirit. And it comes through in work that she creates during the space, things that are coming through, different words, different energies, different feelings. And they are always so beautiful and magnificently spot on. So Leslie, I'm sorry I'm gushing about. So you go ahead and talk about that a little bit and what your experience is like and
Yeah.
about that stuff.
Yeah. So my experience with psychedelics, I mean, I dabbled over the years, here in Canada and also a little bit in Australia as well, but nothing, nothing to the extent of some people, like, some deep psychonauts. But having said that, I was going through a little bit of depression myself, and somebody offered me some MDMA or Molly street names, and that was my first time. And I realized, wow, actually, I got out of my funk a little bit with this, and I probably didn't realize this was during my corporate role too. I didn't realize probably how much I was on that slippery slope at that time, but coming out of it, it just really helped me. And so my curiosity got piqued. I thought, well, this is kind of an interesting way of approaching, working with somebody. And so that's where we met through the program that we both did together. And I really believe that, tying in the psychedelics with my art therapy would be really helpful and beneficial to clients in their journeys, right? Normally, I'm working with people, or we're working with people who might be stuck. Maybe they've done as much as they get to a point, and then, they just need a little bit of help with it too. So I can just see the benefits for myself and how that can also be instrumental in other people's journeys of healing and transformation. So I then took a leap of faith, and I actually went and sat a big one, which was called Iboga. Incidentally, I met a woman who said she wanted to go and sit this. I'd never heard of it before. And I had the opportunity to sit Cambo, Iboga, and 5-MeO DMT on a weekend, which when you haven't done this sort of work before, and I
Yeah,
didn't
I
research it.
would maybe recommend that to everyone.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's what I'm going to
Exactly.
say. It's like, it was, I kind of went in, I want to say I went in blindly, but not in a negative way. It was, I felt called to go and do this, and I did, and it completely transformed my life. And For me, the journey was all about the trauma I endured when I was younger to showing me this up until now, even through some of the adversity that I'd, gone through and all the resilience and that persistence that I had to really get to where I am today. And then got the profound message to say, okay, you're ready. You need to go and finish off this therapy stuff and start working with people in this capacity. So again, I take that as a beautiful sign for me to be where I am today, and then finishing off the art therapy shortly thereafter when I finished my corporate role, so that I could, be in service to others. And it's a very unique way of working with people, Shauna, as you'd mentioned before. Art is another expression of your inner world. And so what I really love about the work that I'm doing is taking the art therapy, or the art or modalities. Like I use somatic work, we do gestures, and anything experiential as well. We'll bring sound into it. And so these different modalities help us access different parts of ourselves, as opposed to, say, the normal talk therapy where we're talking about the narratives and trying to, figure it out in our minds. This brings us more into our bodies. And so what I really love tying together the psychedelics also with the art therapy is it allows people to access parts of self that they might not otherwise have known, because they've just been in this story for their whole entire lives. So yeah, it's a really beautiful way. And again, like when I'm helping people in that experience, I'm really feeling that it's almost as if I'm there with them, walking along inside that journey. And then, I get these insights that I get to then express outwards on a piece of paper. Just something really simple, even it comes out. It could just even be, recently I just did one that was just came out as a seed. And I just had that expression that there's a tree in every seedling, and then from there whatever emerges. And I think it's just allowing people something tangible to contemplate with after, and move into that integration piece as well, where we can bring that in. We call it intersubjective responses in my art therapy, where we get to co-create in the space together. So that's what I feel we're doing when we're in the medicine space. It's that co-creation of like, I'm not just here witnessing you, I'm actually here co-creating with you, and here's something that you can take away that's part of your experience and part of my experience in that as well.
I love that so much. Yeah, I still have mine on my fridge, and I love I can just look at it, every day and just sort of be reminded, it was so cool that for me you drew, it was literally looked like a snake, and this sort of winding pathway and all these really such relevant words for me that she just pulled out of the ether in my journey.
Yeah.
And then just working with that, right? It's such a powerful way to integrate these experiences because, we all know people that do medicine work and do medicine work and do medicine work, do medicine work. They're not
Yeah.
doing the integration, which is, I would say probably, beyond the preparation is the most important piece, because if you're just sort of constantly going back to medicine and not doing the work in between, I just don't think it's beneficial and can be even harmful, I would say. Yeah.
I would even go as far as saying any transformational experience. I was actually listening to a podcast the other day, and there was a bit of a profound moment in that podcast where the gentleman said, okay, now I need to go and take away this, what we've just experienced, and do some integration work. I think that we need to integrate a lot of our life experiences, and we don't take that time to do so. Like, if we have a death of a pet or a family member, we need to take that moment to grieve and do that integration work. Same thing when I left, to go for Camino and came back, it really hit me hard coming home, because when you're walking 800 kilometers with a backpack, you have 6, 7 kilos on your back, and that's all you need for a month of existing and living and knowing your bed and your food's provided for. Coming back to a house full of stuff was really overwhelming for me. And so I would really like to offer that to anyone, that integrating any work that we do is so super important. And especially in the medicine field, a lot of people going down South America, sitting the ayahuasca, Mother Ayahuasca, she's so beautiful. But at the same time, coming back then and having to go back to work or back into the relationships that you're trying to figure out for the moment, and trying to understand, how do I take this profound experience with me and integrate it into my everyday way of being and everyday way of experiencing life. You need some help along the way with that. And that's my jam. Like, that's what I love doing, you know getting people to go and sit it till they get a deep experience and then coming back and really unpacking that. I love that. That's what I live for. I get up every day for that.
Me too. And especially, when you think about it, you have people that have probably been living the majority of their life really sort of from a 3D perspective, really trapped in the material world, right? And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden they have this profound experience where they're shown that there's so much more than that, that they're this, iteration of this grand being. And that
Yeah.
really our life here is just about lived experiences. And it can be so profound because in some ways it helps us see, not to take ourselves so seriously and just sort of lighten up a little bit and move more joyfully. And other
Mm-hmm.
times, though, it can get into the cobwebs, into the recessed corners of our minds and bring up these traumas or deep-seated feelings that we've maybe had suppressed for a very long time. And then, yeah, like you say, you come back into the real world where we're just sort of bombarded constantly again with being pulled back down into this heavy sort of density where most of us are sort of used to living. So it's so important, like you say. And I think that one thing that I'm most proud of our work together is that between my skills and your skills, I mean, because many people, even from a physiological level, let's say, like maybe they're seeking plant medicine or psychedelic medicine because they're having a lot of depression and anxiety and different things like that. And, when we sort of start to dig in on our intake, we find out that they're not even sort of doing the basics in self-care. Like, they're not getting proper rest, they're not eating, they've got all kinds of physiological aspects going on in terms of gut health and hormone imbalances and things like that. And, I personally have had people come to me for psychedelic work. And then once we do the functional medicine stuff, they're like, oh, yeah, actually, I'm good. Now, that's not to say that they couldn't benefit still
Yeah.
because, exploring further levels of consciousness and inner exploration and spiritual development and all of those things are always worth it, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
it's not for everyone, and it's not necessary either for everyone. So I would say that I just wanted to highlight our work together because I think
Mm,
it's been really remarkable for the clients that we've worked with thus far.
for sure. Yeah, I really resonate with what you're saying. And I feel you're an extension of me with the clients that I'm working with, even in the non-medicine world, just, my art therapy clients, simply because people will come in tired and I'll say, have you had your hormones checked lately? Or, sort of what's going on in your world? What's your diet like? Just knowing from my own lived experience, which I really like to bring into my work. And that's where I really had my fair share of stuff go on. And I really like to just sort of meet people in that space and just open that up to an opportunity to look at. Because I really truly believe from, again, the last couple of years of my own experiencing was my physical health was so bad to the point where it was really affecting my emotional health and really affecting my spiritual, like, that connection to my higher self. And so what I noticed happened for me was once I got this physical body in harmony with my emotional body, then the spiritual just continued to flow through. I felt the blocks in my body. And it was, again, like I said, it was this physical way of experiencing, and I needed to change. I was eating healthy, like I said, but I just needed to change things. And so, really understanding what my body truly needs, and then that really lifted my emotional health, my mental health. And then from there, I just felt divine connection coming back in, and just this harmonious balance within myself. So that's what I'm trying to achieve with my clients as well, working on that. And I refer a lot of people to Shauna, or if people are working with their doctors, trying to get them to get tests done that might be more beneficial than, just the checkup sort of thing. Like, you're really not feeling well, go deeper. Don't be scared, because there's answers to these questions, and it's all working together. And there's no reason why we can't all live feeling this balance and harmony in our lives. Does it mean we're not going to have bad days? Yeah, no. Like, there's some days I could wake up and have a funky day. I could be in a funk. But again, too, that's the opportunity to look at what's coming up for me. Am I eating something that's not sitting well, or is this emotional trigger happening as well? So I just have that space and clarity now to really understand what's going on and building that awareness of who I am, what I am, and in a sense, almost witnessing my own journey as I'm building this awareness muscle, which again, I like to bring my clients into just stop avoiding that pain that we need to feel. and just know that that suffering is optional and that there's ways that we can work through that. So that's the human experience in the end.
Amen, sister. So,
Yeah.
Leslie and I really we work, like she said, somatically with our clients in the medicine space and outside the medicine space in terms of energy centers and, wanting that flow of energy. So, when you think about, physical health, right, it's a root chakra thing. It's like, if that's blocked up, where are you going to go from there, right? So,
Yeah.
really important. And I love that you pointed out how once you sort of got physically dialed in, how you can feel the energy rising, you can feel your frequency rising, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so I love that we're talking about this at the beginning of a new year because I know so many people get really hyped up about setting these resolutions. And I think it's more,
Mm.
we were talking the other day about chopping wood and carrying water, right? How
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love to hear. I'm always excited, and I always do my, detox thing. I'm back on my
Mhm.
detox, and that's sort of just an annual thing for me anyway. But it really is about just continuing to do the work, just taking those baby steps. It's about just adding healthy routines, sort of consistently and awareness, always awareness. It always starts with an awareness, right? So
Yeah.
where am I falling down? Where have I fallen back into old patterns and behaviors that are no longer serving me? I think that's really at the beginning of a new year where I
Mm.
like to focus, right? So what did this last
Yeah.
year teach me about where I was still sort of really trapped in old behaviors and patterns? And certainly in this year of the snake, it's about shedding old
Hmm.
and things that no longer serve us. So I'm certainly there working on that myself. And I know
Yeah.
Leslie is as well. And it's lovely to have her as my accountability partner.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah. And as you were speaking, I just got this image, very image driven, of a tree and knowing that leaves are falling off the tree, but really understanding it not from that perspective of like what's happening at the roots level, right? When we get down into the ground, into the root level of like, well, what could be affecting those leaves from falling off that tree? And I think that's what's really important. Like you said, I could walk 20 kilometers, but I probably wouldn't have got my health back in order because there was stuff fundamentally going on in my body that I didn't know, like not having the awareness of that. And I think I went through this where I beat myself up a little bit of like, well, I should be walking more and I should be feeling healthier. And I wasn't. And I was getting more and more frustrated. So I just want to, when you're talking about the New Year's resolutions, we always have these great intentions. But it's like start with the fundamentals, right? If you feel like you're not getting anywhere in whatever you're choosing to do, maybe there's something else going on, and ask those questions as well. Get down to the root cause of what you might be really experiencing, because from there, then, anything else is going to be so much easier and more effective in the way that you can become healthier and more balanced in what you're experiencing right now.
Yeah, and on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And spirituality, and we talk about leveling up in terms of frequency, and so many people think it's all just this, this sort of trajectory that just goes up and up and up. And you and I both know, I would point out Leslie's
Yeah.
a lot of shamanistic training, and so shamans understand that in order to evolve,
Mm,
we don't just go up into the ether, we go down into the depths. And
yeah.
really, this is the premise of my podcast as well. Like I really want people to not be afraid to go into those
Yeah.
depths, to explore those shadow pieces, those parts of us that we've just kept
Yeah.
suppressed down for so long and deemed unlovable or unworthy or whatever. But that
Yeah.
is a huge part of the shaman's journey, and more importantly, the hero's journey. And I know Leslie's very, very well versed on the hero's journey. Maybe just give us a brief synopsis of that work that you do with clients as well, Leslie.
Yeah, so I love Joseph Campbell's work. I mean, I think he was from the anthropology world as well, and that's sort of where I started my education post high school. And one of the courses I did in my transpersonal counseling, which again was such a beautiful course. I did my psychology degree, which was really binary ones and zeros, but the transpersonal counseling was so much more experiential. And one of the modules we did was on ritual, and so from there, we were looking at the hero's journey. And I like to map it as a sort of a triangle, like an inverted, like a V, basically, as somebody who's kind of on the ledge and then tumbling down into the abyss. And then having, at that middle point there, that death rebirth, that dark night of the soul. and then coming back up again. And what typically happens, which is really interesting, we have this call to adventure or crisis that happens in our lives, and that's where we start to go down into this journey. And as we're going down, typically the medical model will throw us antidepressants. We'll start to feel depressed and tired. And so we find ourselves in this loop. It keeps bringing us back up to the top of the cliff, and then we need to go back down. And these antidepressants might not be working anymore. And so we kind of just have to go where we need to go. And so what I really love about it is we're on our way down. We have all these insights and everything that might not make much meaning or sense at the time. And then when we get down to the bottom, and we have this dark night of the soul, this death rebirth, the phoenix is the best way to symbolize that. We're coming out of the ashes. And on our way back up, the most interesting thing is we get these insights that pop back into our minds as we come back up. And it's like, we might have gone and seen a psychic or something and go, oh, yeah, I remember that she said something like that. Or as we were talking the other day, it was like, oh, yeah, I went back to this reading I had done. Or, oh, I remember when I watched that movie and Eat, Pray, Love. And oh, yeah, she said, he said, groceries, you need to forgive yourself. Oh, I haven't done that. So all these beautiful insights and wisdom come to us. And as we're on our way back up, we get to really embody who we truly are. It's like we're shedding that layer of skin, that snake shedding the skin. And we come back on the way up. And then the purpose of this hero's journey, it's not just to go through this tough time. It's actually to bring all the gifts back to the community. Everything that we've experienced on the way down, the deep, dark pain and suffering that we experience in the dark night of the soul, and then on the way back up. And then we bring these gifts back to the community. And that's the hero's journey. It's, if you watch any movie, sorry, spoiler alert for all the movies you're going to watch, they all base it on the hero's journey. There's something that happens, and you have the hero in there, and all these things go on, and then, the thing happens in the end. So, and that's really what we base. This is what our lives are all about. We have mini ones, we have big ones. If you take a moment and reflect where you are in your life right now, you might even start to see where you are on the hero's journey. So I like to use that as a benchmark with my clients when they come in to see where they are. Am I helping them as they're on their way down? Are they in the deep thick of it? Or are we on the way back up where I can help them in that integration piece as well? So, yeah.
I love that. So, so true. It's the great story arc, as they call it.
It
Yeah.
really is. And
And
Gene Keys brings that into, I was going to mention, you mentioned Gene Keys earlier, and that's pretty much what we talk about. If you think about the shadow, the gift in the city, it's really doing that shadow work. That's the hero's journey. And each of those, keys that do that transmission for you in different aspects of your life. It's a really beautiful perspective to take with the Gene Keys as well.
yeah, and it's such a beautiful reflection of what I believe to be a universal law, and it's one of the Hermetic principles, as above, so below, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a reflection, right? We're all just walking each other home, as the saying goes.
Yeah.
So I love that so much. And that's really why I love doing this podcast, because I love to find out, what has your journey been like, and what did you learn about yourself? And more importantly, now what medicine do you have to share? Because that's what we're here for, right? It's
Yeah.
about community, and certainly if you're here on a path of service to others, not everyone is here on that path, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
Well, Leslie, maybe just to sort of get closer to wrapping things up, maybe you could tell us what's your medicine that, we've talked a lot about it, obviously, how you're sharing your gifts with your clients, but maybe sort of who your typical client is and how you work together and the different modalities. And then we'll talk a little about where people can find you.
Yeah. Well, so my clients are typically ones that are looking for a different way of working in the therapeutic. A lot of my clients have gone through talk therapy for many years and haven't found that they've gotten to a place where it's just they're not moving forward anymore. So my work tends to bring things to the surface. It's actually very complementary with talk therapy, I find, because I've worked in conjunction with psychologists before, and what we're doing is sort of bringing some stuff to the surface, and then from there being able to sort of put a little bit more understanding of what to do and how to move forward in it. So like I said, the modalities that I use, any art materials, we can even go for a walk and be in nature and find things and do sand paintings or mandalas outside, representing using sticks or rocks to represent different experiencing different people or things that we're going through in our lives. So the world's a creative place. And I think my underlying objective working with people is to bring them back into that creativity, because I think we are all born natural creators. This is what we're constantly, whether we're making breakfast in the morning, creating our morning coffee to taste the way we want it, we are creating always in every expressional moment that we're existing in. And so what would it be like if we can sort of bring back that childlike creativity as well? And then I love to think about it as like a very intuitive way of accessing what we're experiencing on the inside world. So like our inner verse or our inner world. And so, yeah, I really like to bring the art in to really represent what that might look like, and gives us different perspectives on what our experiencing is. So yeah, my clients, they range from, mostly art therapy I find is that they like to work with the kids, but I'm finding a lot of my clients are sort of early 20s all the way to late 60s so far is what I've been working. And for various reasons, there are different moments of their hero's journey in life, and they're just needing somebody to support them through that. So my work is very emergent. It's very co-creative as well. I like to co-create in the space and just allow whatever is there to emerge. Because what I find, I work best in that. I thrive best in that emergent space, not having an agenda, but to be like, meet it with curiosity and what's going to unfold today. So,
So,
yeah,
so much more expansive and,
yeah,
not a one size fits all kind of approach, which that's where
yeah,
we're in alignment as well.
yeah.
I love
Meeting
that.
people where they're at. Yeah, meeting people where they're at and using the tools that I have to work with you and where you're at, and then what's going on from there, right? Homework in between is like, how can we be more aware of what's happening inside our bodies and what emotional experiences. I love to use the chakra system. I love to bring all the woo into it. Like if you experience something that seems really odd, let's bring it into the space. Let's be curious and let's see what that means. So yeah, that's what I've been. Those are the clients I'm really attracting. Those ones that are almost people who are moving. I would say from the transpersonal perspective, it's like even though that's spiritual emergence, I think that's what's really happening versus, some people might be going through what we call like the spiritual emergency, which is more the psychotic way of, things happening. But how can we normalize that? Because that is something that it might be a little bit from the more professional way of looking at it. It might be psychosis, but also at the same time, it might be, well, you're hearing things. What is it? What are they trying to say to you? Right? Maybe there's some underlying messages there. So really trying to normalize people's spiritual experiences as well.
100%. It's so important. I think so many people who are very sensitive in this world, end up being labeled, like you say, yeah, as either psychotic or whatever, when really what's happening is they're needing to tune into what is their spiritual gift oftentimes, right? And in different cultures, that's the norm. It's only in Western world where
Yeah.
we sort of medicalize it
Yeah.
as it needs to be treated and moved away from. And I know that you and I are not believers in that. And certainly there can be physiological aspects, there can be hormonal imbalances and disturbance
Absolutely.
gut in the brain and elsewhere that can be contributing factors. Once if you've worked on that and then you're still having these things happening, then it's an opportunity, I think, more so than anything to explore. It's oftentimes just our higher self, spirit trying to reach out and connect to us. And we want to be able to normalize that experience and make it a healthy and normal
Yeah.
experience.
That's it. It's a human experience of bringing it all in for
And
sure.
I think
Yeah.
we're going to see just more and more and more of that, in the next coming years. Certainly, I think even 5 years ago, it would have been odd for us to be having this conversation. And now it's
Mm-hmm.
less and less. So, and more people are waking up to the opportunity to have less of an externalized
Yeah.
experience of God and a much more personal and aligned. So
Internal.
I'm
Yeah.
into that. Bring it on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, back in the day, it was all this new age spirituality stuff. And now science is proving exactly what people are experiencing, like your Joe Dispenzas and Bruce Lipton's, they're saying, well, actually, this is not new age. This is actual, this is where science and spirituality
Here.
split back in the day. We're bringing it all back in, we're bringing it all back into alignment, into that balance and harmony. So, yeah, I think it's super important. And I feel that that's really what my purpose is here, is to help people. I had this profound thought recently where if we came about when the universe 16.8 billion years ago, when the universe was created, and let's say we were these fractals that came along with it. And I think, well, maybe we've been here for quite some time. And then we live this life, which might last, 80, 90, 100 years if we're lucky. And then somebody gets to come and work with me, and I get a real tiny sliver of time to be with these people. And so I really am honored and privileged with the clients I get to work with, because it's really a small amount of time in the big scheme of how long we've been here. So, yeah.
I really love that. And I know that Leslie and I, we have intentions when we sit with clients in the medicine space that they all have an opportunity to come to know who they truly are.
Yes.
And I'm happy
Yes.
to say we're
No,
batting
yeah.
100 so far. And, that's really what this whole experience is about too, right? Talking about the hero's journey and the dark night of the soul, whatever. It's just spirit calling us back to ourselves, right? And there's no greater strength you can find in the world, in my opinion. Like I said, because I've been through the ringer and back. What I know now is that, and so many people are talking about the shit show that is the world right now. And it's like, that's just so much noise for me now, because no matter what
Mm,
happens, when you're tuned in to your divine self, no one can ever take that away from you. So no matter
yeah.
what happens, we're good.
Yeah. Right relationship. We call it Aini in the shamanic world. It's when you're in your Aini, the synchronicities happen, you feel the flow, you're in there. And any challenges that come about, you just meet them with that ease and grace, which really is what we can do. There might be pain, but we can get through that without that suffering. And I think that's really important for us to understand that, it's about our expansion more so than it is about our growth. And how can we expand into our true authentic selves? Maybe undoing the doing is another way of looking at it, and really just being, true to who we are from that moment we were born, and shedding all those layers of skin that, got us to where we are today, but might not need to take that with us moving forward.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So awesome. And the more you become authentic into who you truly are, the more ease and flow I find happens. Like the difficulty falls away, the resistance falls away, because we know we're just being moved into the next iteration or
Yeah.
version where we're meant to go, right? So
Yeah. Surrender to the unfolding. That's what it is. It's there. It's happening for us. And being in the flow of the universe. So yeah, it's been an important, I think 2024 for me has been a lot of that. And this year is, my word is liberation. I've already decided that it's all going to be about that, liberating myself from anything that's still holding me back, which I think last year was a pretty good eye-opening, year for me. So yeah, I'm really excited actually for this year. Yeah.
my word just dropped in for me, and it's authenticity. And I know it's a word that's used a lot, but it really is important for me as I keep moving more and more into who I am as a practitioner, which is embracing all of my tools and gifts and abilities.
Hmm.
That's a piece of where you're at as well. So
Yeah, I love that.
I've loved this conversation. Of course, I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll talk more when we hang up here.
Yeah,
Uh,
always.
but many blessings to you. And we'll, of course, post all of Leslie's contact information in the show notes where you can find her and all the beautiful magical work she brings into the world. So
Yeah, thank you.
till next time.
Thanks, Shauna. It's been great. Thanks, everyone.
All right.